So, as we know, in a totally not collective punishment act of genocide, the IDF ordered all Palestinians north of the Wadi Gaza, which is a river valley, to evacuate to the south. Presumably because the IDF is planning to march down across Gaza City like a gigantic iron wave of retribution. Why are they doing this? Because they're evil. Whatever. Let's not focus on that. So they ordered 1.1 million people, the occupants of this light red area, to go down here. They had 24 hours to do it. Now, this is obviously in and of itself a war crime, mass exodus, ethnic cleansing. There's no way to get people to move that quickly. They didn't have water. They didn't have power. They didn't have internet. Recently, in a clear act of us meeting a very high bar, Biden seems to have pressured Israel into resuming water delivery down to South Gaza. So you still have to flee. We're still doing the 1.1 million people fleeing thing. We're still doing that. And down here now there will be water. Considering the fact that humans will die without water in like a few days, it doesn't take that long. I don't know what else they were planning. Like, I guess Biden had to explain that to Netanyahu. Like, he had to be like, they will literally all die anyway. It was like, what? So now there will be water here. Great. That's great. You know? So they only went like 2 days without water and are still doing a gigantic forced exodus, blah, blah, blah. Right. Another interesting piece of intel is that even though apparently people are complying with this grand evacuation, because what other choice do they have, really? You know, what are they going to do? The Israeli people, or I guess I should say the IDF, rewarded Palestinians for their gracious compliance in leaving by airstriking the corridor along which they were headed south. So keep in mind, again, because I want this to be clear, we've talked a lot about Russia. Russia does a lot of artillery strikes. These artillery strikes are not very carefully aimed. When Russia attacks civilian targets in Ukraine, which they've done plenty, it's not like Russia's artillery striking a specific building. It's more like they're indiscriminately attacking a city without consideration for where the shells land. For the most part, the attacks on civilians aren't so much targeted as they are accepted and incidental. Sometimes they do so deliberately, but even then, it's not like they're very accurate with it. Israel, however, uses modern Western munitions, which can pinpoint individual apartment blocks. The weapons that Israel uses always hit where they are meant to. We can never accept like accidental deaths as an excuse here or whatever. So with that in mind, from MSNBC.
According to NBC News can now report 3 convoys of what appear to be evacuees were just hit by Israeli strikes in Gaza. That's according to the Palestinian Health Ministry and also some of our own interviews. 70 people are dead. Only an hour. IDF said an extensive attack against military targets within Gaza was underway. This morning, Israel dropped thousands of leaflets in the north of the Strip warning civilians to go south. Quote, Gaza City has turned into a battlefield.
There are only a few paths south through Gaza, and there's one main one. So what they did was they ordered an evacuation for 1.1 million people, and then with surgical precision struck that convoy, killing 70 people. Now, my personal bet, judging from the behavior that I've seen from the IDF, is that they have moderate control over their soldiers' use of munitions, and that in all likelihood, this was like a commander or maybe even an individual pilot just feeling more evil that day. After all, if the Israeli government wanted to obliterate the convoy, they could. It could also just be a terror tactic, you know, keep the fear of God in them. That's something that Israel has always done. Random attacks, just randomly take out this apartment block or another. Oh, just kill 70 people on the way down. You know, there's 1.1 million of them. 70's not that much. I think that no matter what decision-making process led to this outcome, telling civilians to evacuate through a corridor and then striking the corridor is unconscionably evil. So just keep in mind, Biden may have ordered, or I guess not really ordered, may have asked for water to be given in South Gaza, but that does not in any way remove any of the genocidal or war crime-esque tendencies from this overall situation. We still haven't even seen the ground invasion of northern Gaza. It's the bare minimum. It's not even the bare minimum, to be real. It's not even that, honestly. Israel claims that they're not going to occupy any portion of Gaza, which I kind of believe. I don't think they would benefit from that because it would really make it hard to avoid all the rivers of blood that they have, sort of drawn through the streets. But we still don't know how the actual ground invasion is going to go. We're just going to have to find out. The culture of reporting right now is so when it comes to like the specific behaviors of Israel, what exactly they're doing. Like, holy shit, that Reuters guy, multiple journalists have been murked by Israel already. Yeah, this insane. The Reuters put out a statement saying, yeah, one of our journalists died somehow, and then they put out the article, killed in Lebanon in missile fire from direction of Israel. What are you doing? Do they have a gun to your head in the editor's room? Are you insane? This is unironically like bullet from direction of cops, but it's their journalist. This guy was this is their guy. Actually insane, like genuinely insane. Can you imagine being a journalist? A war journalist too, not just a regular. You're not in a desk, motherfucker. You're there in Lebanon, okay? And you die to a precision Israeli airstrike, okay? Again, Israel doesn't do the like indiscriminate artillery fire thing. If a bomb goes off near you and it was fired from the IDF, they probably knew it was going to hit you. Israel kills reporters all the time. There is no reason to believe they wouldn't do it again here. Why not? Seems no one can criticize them for it. Why not? Why shouldn't the IDF just indiscriminately kill Western journalists? Like, clearly they can. They've killed American citizens before, and it's just like, well, happens. Like, there's clearly no consequence. The co-workers of the men you've killed will write shit like missile fire from direction of Israel. BBC journalist held at gunpoint by Israeli police. Yeah, in case anyone is wondering on a reminder as to why I didn't take up the PCRF's offer and visit the Gaza Strip, this is the reason why. The IDF just kills people. The idea, they will just kill people. There are multiple instances of inarguable, objective murders of Western journalists. I don't really think they would get me. Well, now they might. Knows. Multiple instances of that happening, and it's just like they just do it. Listen to this. Listen to this, guys. This is in Tel Aviv. This wasn't in some like West Bank settlement. This wasn't at like the border to Gaza or like the security fence or whatever. This was in Tel Aviv. They were dragged from the vehicle, marked TV and red tape, searched and pushed against a wall. They identified themselves as BBC journalists. Don't the IDF know BBC journalists are their biggest cuckolds? Well, why would you go after the BBC journalists? Have you seen their broadcasts? It's not like they're not on your side. While attempting to film the incident, Mr. Tutunji said his phone was thrown on the ground and he was struck in the neck. I actually think that, like, for me, the case against hate speech laws is, like, set by this right now. Because in the UK, France, and Germany, they're all just full-on banning pro-Palestinian protests. And over here in the United States, we still have them, you know? Every time, like, you see it, like, the hate speech laws just hand in hand with, like, using any wedge issue or excuse to crack down on dissent, you know? That I see what's going on over there in the UK. I'm not taking any of their advice when it comes to, like, speech laws. Are they using hate speech laws for this? I think I could argue, even if they're not using the laws themselves, they're at very least using the legal precursor to those laws, right? Like, what else are they doing, right? Vosh, here in Germany, Jewish homes are literally getting marked with Star of David. There's a reason to ban pro-Hamas groups. First of all, we're not saying pro-Hamas, we're saying pro-Palestinian. Second of all, how the f do random hate crimes marking Jewish homes with a Star of David? What does that have to do with banning protests? Third of all, pro-Hamas protests should also be legal. Yeah, no, f you, free speech. Jesus. Well, they haven't actually managed to stop the huge pro-Palestinian protests. Guys, if you make pro-Hamas protests bannable, you make pro-Palestinian protests bannable. Because the people who would ban pro-Hamas protests will also just say your pro-Palestinian protest is pro-Hamas. That's what they're doing. That's what they've done in France and in Germany. You have one guy in 1,000 who's like, you know, pro-Hamas, death to Jews, whatever. And then it's like, oh, sorry, Pro-Hamas protest now. Sorry, goodbye. Like, yeah, sorry, it's a free speech thing. No, because it's a democracy. Pro-Palestinian protests aren't banned. Vosh is literally lying here. What the f are you talking about? First of all, if I'm incorrect on something, why would you assume I'm lying rather than trying to correct me? Second of all, what does it being a democracy have to do with whether or not protests are banned? Protests can be banned in a democracy. What country are you even referring to? Isn't being pro-Hamas a protest a call to violence? First of all, having any political opinion implicitly is a call to violence. Being anti-crime is a call to that. Oh God, guys, this is an American live stream. You Eurotards can crawl back to your nanny states and your crybaby bitch anti-free speech laws. Okay, I know how this shit gets weaponized. So what am I wrong on? What nation doesn't have? You idiot! Germany hasn't banned all pro-Palestinian protests. Okay, Germany ban protests. What's going on? Just Berlin? What are you kidding me? If I say in Germany they're banning pro-Palestinian protests, bro, that's not every single protest. That's just a pro-Palestinian protest in Germany, in the capital of Germany. Was this a semantic thing? You were arguing like, oh, well, another one might be legal. What? It's not like France is the point. You spend multiple minutes crying and shitting yourself in chat when the actual disagreement that you have with me is that rather than it being banned broadly across Germany, it's just banned in Berlin, a pro-Palestinian protest. And rather than simply typing out, hey, just to clear it up, Germany doesn't have a holistic ban. There have just been bans. Instead, you spend multiple minutes whining. What is wrong with you? Why are you so bad at communicating? What personal problems do you have which are a product of your inability to simply convey information? You could have said that and it would have been over in a second, but you couldn't because you're not capable of making what's going on in your head evident to other people. This is your fault and your problem, and you suffer for it more than I do. I suffer immensely from your stupidity, but you suffer even more. You're okay with Republicans waving swastikas in protest, Vosh? They do. And yes, we've literally gone over this a million times before. Yeah, I don't think the police should come in and crack down on far-right protests in and of themselves. Usually far-right groups will do other things that can get them scrutinized in the eye of the law. It's pretty difficult to have like a militant Nazi group that isn't also planning crimes. Usually they f themselves over on account of those. Free speech absolutist arcs out now. This isn't starting now. I've always felt this way. This isn't new. It's also not free speech absolutism. I'm not a free speech absolutist. Please, Germany has banned Palestinian protests for years. Chatters are brain dead. Berlin bans Nakba Day demonstrations. In Berlin, however, police banned several Nakba Day protests planning for May 13th to 15th. When people took to the streets anyway, police responded forcefully, shoving and dragging demonstrators, detaining scores for up to 2 hours, according to witnesses, lawyers, and video footage reviewed by Human Rights Watch. In one clip, an officer tells a woman she is being held because she shouted "Free Palestine." Any dipshits in chat want to keep arguing over this? Why were like 5 separate people in chat all of a sudden really upsetty spaghetti when I pointed out that you guys are worse on free speech than we are? You think you Eurotards are better on free speech than America? You idiots, you buffoons. I see the lunatic shit you people get in trouble for. Christ, I listen to British podcasters. They can't even directly insult J.K. Rowling because your laws for libel and slander are so loose that you can unironically be sued or arrested for insulting a person. Insane. The Met Police are literally singling out people from protests for arrest and prosecution. What the f? Metropolitan Police events. Officers investigating a public order offense wish to identify 2 women who attended protests yesterday. At present, we only have a front-on image of the woman in red. We asked these women or anyone who knows their identity to contact officers. What do they do? What the f? Remember when chat defended Canada going after protesters' finances because they didn't like the trucker protest? Yeah, literally. They were like, bro, big trucks are blocking a bridge. We have no choice but to give our prime minister emergency powers so that he can quietly freeze the finances of protesters without judicial review. We have no other way of addressing this. Over here in America, breaking up a big protest would be it's not that it doesn't happen. It does happen. It's just it would be pretty special. It'd be pretty wacky. Something that a lot of Europeans don't understand is that in America, people are always protesting. Like, France has really wild anti-government protests, but if you go to like Los Angeles and just walk around the downtown area for an hour or two, first of all, good luck, don't get mugged. But second of all, you will come across some kind of like protest, like people are... There's always some group or another getting angry over something. Remember when the COVID lockdowns very briefly happened and there were COVID lockdown protests like everywhere, I think that France has a better culture when it comes to anti-government protesting, but when it comes to protesting around issues of speech or political allegiance, America is pretty unbeatable, Like, this is a country where it's not illegal to be an Antifa Black Bloc group, where we had the BLM protests where tens of millions of Americans marched around the country, and where we had Charlottesville. Like, people are often out in the street, people are often protesting, and a lot of wacky opinions get thrown out there. And while the police do often break up individual protests, they usually do it in the general kind of like, all right, let's clear the roads kind of way, and not in this like, we're just banning pro-Palestinian protests. Again, not to say it doesn't happen, it does, but it's pretty uncommon. The Quds minister formulates emergency regulations to imprison citizens who, quote, harm national morale. Yeah, this seems about right. Yeah. Israel is functionally very fascist-leaning, especially when it comes to their dealings with Gaza, so it makes sense that they would try for this. I doubt this will pass, though. Netanyahu's government is already so unpopular. I do not think... Like, Netanyahu is a lot like Putin, except Putin is popular with his people, and Netanyahu is not. Putin... as much of a monster as he is, has led Russia into a somewhat successful era of like national distancing where they manage their own affairs and chug along in large part because of like natural resources in spite of international denunciation. And he comes across as like an effective strongman, whereas Netanyahu is just this bloated, corrupt... I mean, so is Putin, but Netanyahu is not as competent as Putin. English fascists turned up to the Palestinian Solidarity demo with provocative flags. They lost all three. Anti-fascist and pro-Palestinian demonstrators embarrassed them. Look for the write-up in the next few days. Oh, that's nice. Kid Starver. What do you have to say, Kid Starver? A week ago, we awoke to the unimaginable and heartbreaking news of terrorist attacks on Israel from Gaza by Hamas. We repeat our call for Hamas to release all hostages immediately and for the protection of innocent civilian lives in Israel and Gaza. I like how both he and Biden are doing this, where they're like, we can't be accused of being anti-Semitic. We have to go like full tilt support Israel. And now that they're getting like the tiniest bit of breathing room, they're like, oh, also don't kill civilians. Okay, we fully support Israel. We'll die to defend Israel. Don't kill civilians, please, unless you want to. And it's like, okay, thanks, man. Why do they have such a grip on us? That's a great question. They don't. I talk about this at the beginning of today's stream, where I explain how the apparent cucking the West has done it to Israel to itself is actually something that we've done to ourselves, and Israel actually has very little independent power. If it was ever, I'll say this, if it was ever politically expedient, like if the voters stopped caring about Israel, we would too. Like it's purely like a following the discourse matter. It's not like an inherent like of Israel at all. Bill Clinton agrees with you on this point. I don't want to agree with Bill Clinton. Netanyahu's first presidential feud was with Bill Clinton. In the book, The Much Too Promised Land, Aaron David Miller, the deputy director of the White House's Arab-Israeli peace negotiations team, wrote that during their first meeting in the summer of 1996, Netanyahu lectured Clinton about the Arab-Israeli conflict. Who the f*** does he think he is? Miller quoted Clinton as remarking. Who's the superpower here? That is so funny. That is so funny. First of all, imagine giving a single shit what Netanyahu has to say about Arab-Israeli relations, and say Clinton's like, what the f*** are you talking about? You're a tiny little Middle East. What are you doing? We're America. Say it in a Clinton voice. I don't really have a Clinton voice. Who the f*** does he think he is? Who's the fucking superpower here? I don't think that's Clinton at all. I'm doing this off memory. I haven't listened to him say anything in like ages. That was so bad. Yeah, I don't remember what he sounds like. A similar scene played itself out in May 2011. Seated alongside Netanyahu and before the National Press Corps, Obama listened respectfully, but with what looked like mounting annoyance, to a 6.5-minute Netanyahu lecture on Israel's need for a peace that will not crash eventually on the rocks of Middle Eastern reality. I guess one of the hard parts of being an American president is you have to pretend to like Netanyahu at least a little bit. So every once in a while, this loser, this bloated, sick has to like wander into the White House, and you have to just sit there and not cause an international incident by interrupting him. Jeffrey Goldberg quoted NBC's Andrea Mitchell as saying afterwards that some Israeli officials acknowledged they were uncomfortable with the lecturing tone. Israeli officials? Like there were a bunch of Netanyahu's guys there who were all thinking, why the f is he lecturing Obama?